And good morning. It is Thursday, and welcome back to our little 3 minutes with Mike. You know, one of the great influences in my life, we've shared this with you, was, of course, Michael Vance. And Michael Vance was one of the founders of, in fact, I guess the founder of what is called Disney University. He was president, I'm told time and time again, of that Disney University. It's one of the most respected business universities that is a non-collegiate campus university. And Michael had a great influence because he kept exposing me to ideas I knew nothing about. And every time I talked to Mike, and it would happen all the time, as soon as we shook hands, said hello, he would always smile and say, "Question." And I knew what was coming, and I didn't like the question. "Question." I'd say, "Yes, sir, what is it?" "What have you learned since I saw you last?" And then he would stop and look at me. And if I didn't have a couple of ideas that I had learned, he would just walk away. I remember getting on an airplane in Atlanta, Georgia. And I get on the plane in seat 2B, and as I sit down, Mike Vance is sitting in 2A. We're flying to LA. I got 5 hours with my hero. As soon as I sat down, he looked at me and said, "What have you learned since I saw you last?" I said, "I haven't learned a lot." He said, "Well, then I guess we're not having a conversation," and he looked away. I had to scramble for the next 10 minutes to think of something I had learned so we could have a conversation. One of the most important things Mike Vance taught me, he made me read several times Abraham Maslow's great book on the 4 levels of learning. And he pounded this stuff into my head all the time because he said, this is the key to growth, productivity, profitability, learning, staying in the game, etc. And he said, as you know, there's 4 levels to learning, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. The first level of learning, you've heard it before, he called unconscious incompetence. I said, relate that to day-to-day life. He said, that's when you're talking to a person that is stupid but doesn't know it because nobody told them they were stupid. And most of the world is unconsciously incompetent. They just drift through life day after day. Some of those people are in real estate. When they become a little smarter, they become what he called the second level, conscious incompetent. And conscious incompetent is where you're stupid and you know it because somebody told you that you were stupid and you figured it out. It's an interesting revelation for people to go through. Then the third level of learning was what he called conscious competence. Conscious competence. And this is where you know that you know. And that's a very important part of the learning process. It's when you have learned your scripts, you've learned your dialogues, you've learned your time management system, you're executing. The challenge with conscious competence, of course, is that's where the ego gets real big. I got this thing all figured out. And then he said you move to the top level of learning, what he called unconscious competence, and that's where you do what you do so well, you don't have to think about it. And that's, of course, the point we're trying to get to, with all of you, unconscious competence. So I said to Mike one day, okay, if I've made it up to a certain level and I finally get to the top in, for example, direct sales or teaching people how to sell, how do I improve? Listen to what he said. You got to constantly expose your brain and your mind to things you know nothing about, which makes you stupid all over again and brings you back to the bottom level of unconscious incompetence so you can learn that process. So here's my question for Thursday. What are you exposing your brain to within the Mike Ferry sales system, or do you have it all figured out? I haven't figured it out yet, and I've been teaching it for 42 years. Some of you have it all figured out. Okay, is there anything in the teachings that we have for you and the coaching we do that you're not as comfortable with as you should be, and should you then pursue a new schedule of learning to raise your knowledge base and round you off as a more successful real estate agent and person? The answer is probably yes. If that is the case, think about that. Next time I see you, I'm going to ask you, by the way, what you've learned since I saw you last. Have a great one. Talk to you again the first of the week.